Hello and welcome to another episode of Mystic Femininity. In today's episode, Embodying the Goddess, Unlock Your Sacred Feminine Energy, we are going to go on a little journey, and I hope by the end of it, you have stepped into your divine power and you are owning your sacred femininity. One of the things that I notice when I hear about the divine feminine, and there are many people, especially of the women variety, some are really into it, some are not. And part of that is it feels as though it's very intangible. In our world, we are congratulated, rewarded, incentivized for being in a hyper masculine state constantly. There's a constant reward or a dangling carrot, if you will, on being in your hyper masculine, which often is to betray your feminine side as a woman. You are encouraged to essentially self-sabotage, and it's rewardable. It makes others happy outside of you, and you may receive benefits from it. You may work a job. There is a goal, there's a sales quota, there's a production quota, and you are a babe who's about getting her bag. So you're going to be hyper focused on doing so. So there is a reward to it, but the long-term consequences do not necessarily mean a negative thing, but when you do something, there is a consequence. So if you really work on tapping into your divine feminine, the consequence is being more grounded, being able to tap into your divine intervention connection, and then being able to be creative and birth whatever it is that you want to birth. So there's consequences to that. And unfortunately, in this modern era, the desire to be heavier in your masculine, there is consequences that may not show up immediately, but over time, with anything in this world, consistency, what do you do consistently, will begin to show. So if you are consistently being devoted to whatever that you're devoted to, you will eventually see fruits of your labor. And so when we are constantly driving into the masculine, we begin to have issues. Those issues show up on the physical realm, the emotional realm, and most definitely our spiritual realm. On the physical, it could be that you're going to be wanting to drink more or use other substances to disembody. You may be gaining weight or underweight because you're not eating or you're overeating things that are not good for you and your vessel. You will start to see a need for potential Botox or other procedures, which there's nothing wrong with those. But if it's because of neglect, that's where there can be a bit of an issue. On the emotional side, you're unable to have fulfilling relationships, or the relationships you have are very one-sided. Think of more of like you're only getting situationships, and this doesn't just apply to your intimate relationships, but also your friendships. It seems that it's only for a certain thing, and then spiritually, essentially, you would just be a mess. You would not be connected to your own connection with the divine, and you'll be missing a lot of things that could come to you because you're so everywhere. There's just chaos. It's violence in that spiritual realm. And so when you begin the journey of becoming embodied in your divine feminine, really tapping into that inner goddess, many of us will run into challenges that will make us quit prematurely because it has been so ingrained for us to be in our masculine. And I always say on this podcast, there's nothing wrong with the masculine. We need both. There is a need for balance. But you came here as a feminine being, and so there was an experience that you were meant to have being in a feminine form. There are experiences as a woman that no man will ever have. I don't care what may be put in, but it is not organic. It is not something that comes from just being a woman naturally. biographically a woman, that is not the same. And so with those experiences, there's just a different heightened level of energy that you have. And it is a sad thing when you are not able to really embrace it. Because to some degree, when we don't embrace this experience in a feminine being, we are almost being ungrateful for the opportunity. And it's not to romanticize some of the painful things that happen as being a woman and being in your feminine, but there is also some very beautiful things that we can neglect to see the benefits of, or we may never experience it because we're so focused on being rewarded within a masculine. And that's unfortunately not a negative thing towards anyone, but this is just how the programming has worked. And these are now the results of such programming over time. In my day-to-day, I don't meet many women who are very much appreciative and tapped into the finer parts of their feminine energy. Anyone can put on item, but it takes a different essence that comes very much innately to being into your divine feminine. And we both, men and women, have both, but typically one is going to be more heavier leaning dependent on the vessel that it is. And if you're someone who's like, I'm a mixture of both, you kind of get to choose which way you want to lean more heavily, because there's a benefit to both. Now, in this podcast, we're going to kind of get into the spiritual aspects, which is always, but we're also going to get into the practical. How can you make these things happen, be it through your practices of sacred rituals, self-care, and movement. And we're going to get into some of the balancing needs of both the feminine and masculine energies, because this helps to create harmony, nurture your spirit, and for you to live in the most aligned with your higher self. So, with every woman, there lies energy of a goddess, radiant, intuitive, powerful. Yet, because of our modern society, and there's such a rush for us to get to a certain place, we forget that we even have access to it. It's like you have a bank account with $1 million in it, and you forget that you have it, and you're operating like, I'm broke, I don't have money, I don't have the way to do XYZ, yet you have a bank account with all the funds that you could ever need in this lifetime, and yet you're not accessing it. And that is where we are disconnected from our feminine. The major focus that I want to make sure that you take away from this episode is for you to truly reconnect with the divine essence through your sacred practices, through balance, and through self-care. And now I encourage you to take some notes if something sparks an idea for you, so that way you can get after it today. Now, first off, what does it mean to be embodied in the goddess? I know that if you take any moment on TikTok or Instagram or Pinterest, you see all these, embrace your inner goddess. And it sounds cute. For some, it sounds really cutesy and aspirational. Others, it makes eye rolls happen. Heavy, very heavy. But to be embodied in the goddess energy, you are living authentically with power and grace, while fully embracing your feminine essence, understanding that your feminine essence is very powerful and has much grace involved. And this grace and power first must come for you in your life, and then you give from your abundance of such. When you are interconnected, you are truly an aligned individual. You're an aligned being. Your body, your mind, your spirit, they're all working together, and they're not fighting each other. Your body isn't betraying you where the mind is betraying you, and spiritually it's just utter chaos. You are in a great sense of flow. That is a key takeaway that you can know if you are moving in the embodied way, is that you feel a flow about all that you're doing. If you don't feel flow, that is like on your car a check engine light or a gas light. You need to kind of stop, pull over, and check in and see what is disconnected. And then the unfortunate thing is, for a lot of women, we have been so disconnected for so long that we don't even know what flow feels like. We don't know how to maneuver out of it because we have been so ingrained in not being. Now, society conditioning pushes us as women to suppress our feminine qualities and embrace more of the masculine. The goal should be to embrace your feminine pieces and then also embrace these parts, because it will lead you to self-actualization, self-empowerment. It's all within you. Our conditioning makes it very difficult for us to show up as we want to. So for instance, if you are a woman, let's say you are one who likes a little skin to show. You like to put on makeup. You like to wear your hair in a very just flowy, pretty way. You like your nails done. Depending on what environment you're in, you may be told that that's inappropriate. No one's going to take you seriously. You need to dial it down. You need to wear slacks that are loose, a loose shirt, baggy shirt. Don't wear makeup because that's, for those types of girls. And don't do your hair, pull your hair in a bun, wear chapstick. Essentially, just disengage from everything that can be aesthetically feminine. But this goes even deeper in the sense of you need to be a girl who is cool with everything. She's just kind of the neighborhood next door, the girl next door, doesn't make a fuss, doesn't have standards, doesn't have requirements, may have sex with the guy just because it's, the thing to do, but completely disengaged from their own desires, what makes them happy, what pleases them. This is how we in our society condition, and it starts very early, to condition us into suppressing our feminine essence and essentially disengaging and suppressing our power. And if we think about that, if every woman was empowered, fully embodied, our reality would be a very different place. Now, moving into some of the practices, you need to create sacred practices. I say that on quite a few episodes, and the reason is, when you don't have what is your practice, you can go on Pinterest or anywhere and adopt someone else's practices. And some of the things you might relate to, like they may resonate, but some things won't. And you need to make sure that you are always in the driver's seat of your practices. Now, I'm going to give a few examples of what you can do. Again, you need to think about what moves you, what energizes you, what helps you to be grounded. And if you're someone who's like, I really don't know, I'm completely at a loss, then go experiment. Now, that is what I will always encourage. If you don't know, experiment, try some things, and then ask yourself, did that make me happy? Did I feel anything? Yes or no? Like, you either is a yes, or if it's kind of like, it's cool, that's a no. Like, and that's again how our society has conditioned us. It doesn't, I'm not really feeling that, but I'll do it because, I don't want to make a fuss. No, that doesn't feel good. It's an immediate like, oh yes, this hit the spot. That's the answers that you're looking for. That's how you can know that you're moving from your divine feminine inner goddess versus not. So ways that you can make some sacred practices: you can create a small altar if you have the space, with candles, crystals, or whatever meaningful totems that are really applicable to you to help you ground. Other things that you can do is going to be movement. Our bodies, both men and women, were designed to move. Now, again, our society has conditioned us not to move in a way that's going to be, at least for especially for the women, it's taboo for you to be a dancer. And dance, that is acceptable, maybe more, say, ballet, ballroom, something of that sort. But your movement could be twerking. Your movement could be some of your native land's dance, and that can be perceived as negative. I think of a lot of different cultures. They have dance, they decorate themselves, and it is a really moving piece. And unfortunately, our society essentially whitewashes us from tapping into our native ethnic backgrounds and embracing the beauty of those and being able to tap into that lineage. Being born into the lineage that you're in was a purpose because it had different teaching methodologies. But when we are pushed to not, when we either from a parent to the child, where the parent suppresses and doesn't share and tell the knowledge to said child, then that knowledge is then lost. And oftentimes it's done to protect, in the eyes of the parent, to protect the child, because whatever that may be of those teachings may not be deemed acceptable. And so if the child is never taught, they are protected because they won't rebel against it. But you need to find a method to sacred movement. So that can be dance, it can be yoga, it could be walking in nature. Whatever helps you to channel the flow of your feminine energy. And I would really encourage you to explore different means. Like for myself, I am not an outside girl. I am an indoor cat forever and ever. But dancing makes me happy, even if it doesn't look the way I may want it to look, or when I've seen other dancers move, it may not look that way, but I am honoring my feminine energy by moving my body in a way that pleases me. Now, can I get better at it? Sure, that consistency occurs, but that is important. The next thing is having a creative outlet, some form of creativity, because the feminine is a creative. We birth things. It can be a big head baby. It could be a business. It can be a book. It could be a painting. It could be a meal that nourishes one's heart and soul. It can be anything. We birth things. And to me, to think of birth is creativity, because you took an idea, you execute it, and now we have this thing. So like if we think of a baby, you had an idea that this is what you wanted. You did some activities to produce said baby, and then you carried the process through to fruition, to then having that little warm bundle in your arms. That is creativity. And our society suppresses women from being able to tap into their feminine essence. So if you work in corporate, if you've taken any sort of conferences, workshops about air quotes professional communication, there's often this notion that you need to replace what I feel with I think. I feel versus I think. The I feel has been deemed as feminine, thus unacceptable. The I think is deemed as masculine, and that is confident. That's the good way to go. And that is not the case at all. Because oftentimes what I think is just regurgitation from what I may have read from someone else's thoughts. So I really don't think anything. I'm just following along and I'm cosplaying. It's much, much different. But when you're thinking of your creativity and the outlets that you can do, you can paint, you can journal. It could be cooking a meal, like getting really creative in the kitchen. You can have a lot of fun with a lot of different things. It could even be doing your makeup, doing your hair, just exploring the feminine arts. It could be horseback riding. It can be sculpture. It can be anything. Again, if you don't know what you like, then explore, experiment. But if you do, and you say, I haven't done that in years, go dust it off. Go try again. And it will help you to have more energy. It'll give you a means of release. And we need that as feminine beings. Now, balancing our feminine and masculine energies. There is an extreme importance in being able to balance the feminine. Our feminine energy is going to be that intuitive and nurturing. This complements the masculine energy, which is logical, assertive. Too much of either can cause imbalance. So, for instance, you could be someone who either overeats or undereats. At the end of the day, being on either end of the spectrum is not the wave. It's not for your highest good. We want to be somewhere in the middle. If you think of a table that has 4 legs, 2 on one side, 2 on the other, if you lean it to one side, everything falls off that way, and if you do it vice versa, it's going to fall off. A table cannot be in its true function, its purpose, if it's not balanced. And we might put something, if something isn't balanced, like let's say one of the legs is a little short, maybe we have to give it a little support, a little boost, so that it matches up to the other legs in order for it to be balanced. But that is essentially the same thing as our feminine life and our essence. We need to make sure that we're balanced so that we can make sure that we are living at our highest good and our highest purpose. Now, you may be asking, how do I do that? How do I make balance? So that could be asserting your boundaries. Now, that's going to be that masculine energy. But then also maintaining compassionate understanding. That's the feminine. You can assert your boundaries and you don't have to be mean about it. Unless you have to. Sometimes you have to be. But for the most part, people will treat you as you allow. And it sometimes sounds really off when I hear that, because it's like, okay, so the other person gets off the hook. No, they're only going to do what's permitted. Now, will there be a person who will try it? Yes, there will always be those people. And that's when you need to do a little light tap. That's when you may have to get a little bit more aggressive. This is when you may need to lean a little bit more masculine in order to get your fingers, your point across. But it's also being in your feminine and being intuitive enough to say, okay, this isn't something that I can battle on my own. I need to escape. Because see, again, either side, too much of either one is going to not be for your great. So if it's hyper intuitive, that means you're letting people run in and out of your energetic screen door with no sort of regard for you. But then in the other end, it could be that you're just completely vindictive, almost to a point of violence. Neither of those are going to be great. Neither of those produces results that one would want. And oftentimes for the feminine side, we just kind of live with it. And over time, just living with stuff that isn't aligned with us, we begin to start to see the cracks. And I will say, when it's not addressed, it will then start to spread over every area of your life. So not just your intimate relationships, but your friendships, your work, if you have children, with them, even in how you take care of yourself. It's extremely important to make sure you're balancing the two, and being able to know when to do which one is extremely powerful. When we take heed to these notions and really reflect, I will suggest that if you're reflecting, take some notes, because it will help you to look back on it. And again, that's your divine feminine energy working for you, because you're able to look at the messaging that you've received. And often those messages are coming from the divine. It is important that we as feminine beings, we honor ourselves, our true authentic selves. So that means knowing when we need to rest, knowing when we need to move, and also knowing when we need to focus, knowing when we need to be about the business. That is the balancing of the authentic inner goddess. Now, here are some self-care means that you can do on a daily basis. When I look at my self-care, I'm really trying to tap into that sacral, that orange, juicy, pleasurable arena. So that could be really taking my time with my skincare, pulling my gua sha out, pulling my little globes out, and giving myself a nice massage in the morning before starting work. It could be taking time with my coffee and writing down my gratitude. It could be being very present when I'm eating and making sure that I choose foods that make me feel good instead of just eating stuff that I really don't feel good about, but it's what was closest to me. That is acknowledging who you are authentically in order to make you better. This also is ensuring that you are taking time to have restorative rest. Again, in our society, we are incentivized to be hyperproductive. That often means we become uncomfortable when we actually don't do anything, when we just sit and we are just still. We're quiet. We're tuning into our bodies. We're saying, ooh, my back doesn't feel that great. Ooh, why do I have a headache? Ooh, I haven't had water all day. I've only had caffeine. Oh, I haven't eaten today. All those things matter in embracing you as the goddess. If you've listened to this to its completion, I want you to really reflect on the message today. And I want you to take something today and implement that in your journey of embodying your goddess energy. That could be moving your body, it could be stretching, it could be doing some nice self-care, it could be making a sacred place in your home. I encourage you to tap into your divine feminine goddess because you deserve that. The goddess within you is always present. She's waiting to guide you toward your highest self. When you align with her, you unlock the limitless power of love and grace that already resides within you. You don't need to go on a feminine journey. I'm trying to find my feminine journey. You already are at the destination. You just actually need to open the door and go in and start enjoying that is you. If this message resonated with you, we don't gatekeep here. Go and share this with a friend on social media. And if you really are feeling something, I would love it if you write a review, rate this podcast, as I am trying to cultivate a community of women who are embracing their goddess energy in this reality. And until next time, make sure you're living your best life.